Hello everybody, and welcome to this video, which is kindly sponsored by Squarespace. So today we're going to be updating the Meeting Drac section, since we've already done the Portsmouth tour, but now I'm going to give everyone a chance to have a voice on where the next tour is going to be. So since there's not an inbuilt polling option on Squarespace, I'm kind of creating one of my own. As you can see here, I'm using the events section, which comes in this particular format, prepackaged with 3 events on there. And I'm retitling it as Upcoming Tours Expressions of Interest, and obviously going Portsmouth Historic Dockyard again. And I'm also going to include Chatham and HMS Belfast, and then you'll see in a second I'm just going to edit the button down there and give it the email and then a default title. So then if you go to the section of the website, if you want to come and have a guided tour around one of these 3 places, then all you have to do is go and click on that. It'll generate an email, and all you have to do is just hit send. You don't have to add anything else to the body of the message. And then I can count up how many emails I have voting for each place, and that'll dictate to a certain degree where the next tour in early 2024 will take place. It's quite easy to set up, actually. I'm very surprised. Anyway, so if after all these little mini tutorials I've been doing, you think you could build a website for maybe ideally naval history purposes, but you never know, you might want to do it for some other reason, then head over to squarespace.com/Drakenfell. You can get a free trial, and once you're ready, that little link will give you 10% off your first website or domain. So thanks once again to Squarespace for sponsoring the video, and on with the main show. So a little while back, I was in Hungary for mostly personal reasons, but I was also lucky enough to meet up with a few Hungarian subscribers, and we went to a number of interesting places, and one of which you'll see in a video next month. But this month I'm going to bring you a little sample of where I went on one of the days, which was to arrange with the wonderful gentleman who runs the YouTube channel Cap and Ball, looking at gunpowder era firearms, because of course you've seen the collaboration I did with Sea and Arsenal, hopefully last year, looking at various Western naval firearms, but we thought, well, why not go through chronologically some of the black powder firearms that were used in the Austrian armed services, because there's a lot of crossover between the Austrian and then later Austro-Hungarian Army and Navy in terms of the firearms they used. And hey, black powder firearms don't get mentioned quite as often as some of the more modern ones either. So with that said, let's have a look at what they were using, and you'll see how the professional does it, and then how me, the amateur, does it, and some of the differences inherent to that. Let's get on with it. Right, hello everyone. We're in the middle of Hungary, and it's really nice and quiet. No sounds of urban life, etc., which is probably just as well. So we're out here on the range, and as you can see below us, where there are a number of rather interesting things that go bang. So what exactly are these, and who's the wonderful gentleman standing next to me? Well, do you want to give yourself an introduction?
Okay, so this is Cap and Ball from Hungary, or Balázs Németh, that's my normal name. And I'm focusing on historical firearms, so actually I'm also doing my YouTube channel, which is a black powder YouTube channel, which means that the most of my videos are made about guns before the age of nitrocellulose powders, smokeless powders, but sometimes I wander into Second World War as well, First World War, Second World War as well. What we have here for you now is a beautiful coverage of the guns of the Austrian army and then the Austro-Hungarian army, which is let's say showing the guns from the Napoleonic Wars up until the end of the First World War with the M95. So that's a beautiful time of gun development.
Yeah, and as many of you will probably know, this is a naval history channel, but we do actually have a naval service gun here, but also a lot of other guns would be found in the naval service as and when was necessary. So if you've seen the video I did in the States, you'll know that you get things like the Winchester. It's normally found on land, but it was much beloved of the Royal Navy in World War I, and there are some differences between sea service rifles and regular service rifles, but when it comes to a period of actual war, obviously there's usually a lot more men than there are in peacetime. Small arms stocks run low, so whatever is available is what will be taken out. So whilst there's not a huge number of naval wars in the 19th century and early 20th century for the
Mhm.
Austro-Hungarian Navy. We do, of course, have the Battle of Lissa in the 1850s, 1860s,
60s.
and obviously the First World War. The
Yeah.
Austro-Hungarian Navy is involved
The
in
War
that.
of 1864
Mhm.
against the Danish kingdom, where we had some involvement. In fact, the Austrian army and the Austro-Hungarian army had the tendency to serve each and every single type of troops with their rifle. So they had different types for each, for the light troops, for the normal regular infantry, for the cavalry, and but these differences are disappearing as we go in time. So, for example, when we arrive to the Vendor rifle, there is no more a light infantry rifle and the standard issue rifle. So this is actually the same rifle that was used by the Navy as well. And when we arrive to the Maliker, the first really successful small caliber repeating rifle firing a smokeless self-contained cartridge, then I have to say that all these differences disappear.
Yeah, and of course the Austro-Hungarian Navy is operating mostly in the Adriatic. There's a lot of landing operations going on as well, because there's the objective to control the sea. You have to take ports, you have to take islands, etc. And so it's not just going to be purely naval brigade.
Yes.
There is going to be transportation of troops as well. So these guns would find themselves at sea, even if the people who are holding them weren't necessarily that thrilled with being at sea.
Yeah. Actually, the only real, let's say, naval rifle that we have here is this model 1849 Kammerbüchse. This was also a light troop rifle, by the way, so it was designed for the second and the third line, the first and the second line of the Jaeger troops to be armed with rifles, because these troops were still issued smoothbore guns. But from the 1840s, they tried to give each and every single light soldier a rifled arm, and this was supposed to be in the first and the second ranks. This rifle is an interesting rifle because this was issued to the Chaikis battalion. I don't know if you have already covered the history of this battalion. They were acting on the lower parts of the river Danube, and they were supposed to protect the confluence of the Tisza River and the Danube River. This battalion actually was completely issued. Completely equipped with these rifles, and this was the very first rifle that was using a percussion lock. It's a special kind of percussion lock that we are going to talk about later, and it also fired a conical bullet. So this was the first ever conical bullet firing rifle of the Austro-Hungarian monarchy that started a completely new paradigm.
Okay, right, so we'll head over to the rest of the range. We'll have a bit of a closer look at each rifle to explain how it works and what it's going to do, and then we'll see how well we can hit things.
Yeah. Okay, so this is our first rifle for today. This is from the Napoleonic Wars. It's a light infantry rifle. This is called the Jägerstützen. It's a model 1807 Jägerstützen. Now, when I say 1807, let's not forget that these names are given by modern time collectors and modern time museologists, so they just called it the Jägerstützen, the flintlock Jägerstützen. The most important part of this gun is the lock, and the lock is working a very easy way that was used from the, let's say, from the beginning of the 16th century in Europe, which means we have a flint here, we have a steel that is built together with the pen cover, and when the hammer strikes, the flint will make sparks on the steel. It is actually separating small particles of hot chips from the metal, and this is igniting the priming powder in the pen, and through the touch hole it will reach the main charge and it will fire the ball. Now, these rifles were loaded with patched round ball, which was slow to load, so this was much slower to load than the smoothbore muskets. This is one reason why it was not issued to every single truce, because you had to have the good rate of fire that could only be achieved with the later conical bullets. So this rifle can be fired, let's say, 1 or maximum 1.5 times a minute, which is quite slow compared to an infantry musket, which is, let's say, 3-4 shots a minute. Let's try it. Okay, so the loading procedure is quite easy, and it is quite close to the way we load a flintlock muzzle loader today. It's a muzzle loading gun, so we are going to load it through the muzzle. We put the hammer in half cock, open the pen, and then, as a military standard, we prime the pen first. This was important because if you use the paper cartridge, then this was the first step to do, otherwise you won't have any paper left for the pen. We close the pen, but we leave the hammer in the safety position, and this is how we are going to load the gun. Now, if you're a modern time shooter, we prime the pen as a last action, so we don't do it for safety, but this is a military style of shooting now. The next part is to charge the powder into the bore. Now, as you can see, this Jäger Patronentasche or cartridge box I have on me has every single tool that we need for loading the rifle, and we have a volumetric powder measure as well. So from the powder horn, the Jäger powder horn, we are measuring 1 dose of powder, which used to be 3.75 grams of fine black powder. We charge it in the muzzle, and then we put a patch, or the Pflaster as it was called in German, which is saturated with the mix of beeswax and tallow. We put it on the muzzle, and then we put a single round ball on it. The round balls were issued to the soldiers in paper cases like this, which you had to break and put all the balls into your cartridge box, if you can. Then you put the ball into the muzzle symmetrically. Start the ball with your wooden mallet, that was also part of the equipment, and ram it down with the ramrod. Now, you saw that my ramrod is secured to the cartridge box, and the cartridge box steps with 2 rings. Now when you are using it, you replace it into the last section, to the last ring, because now it has free movement. As you can see on the light infantry rifles of the Austrian army, there is no channel for the ramrod, so they were worn separately, also by the cavalry, by the way. And don't let it slip it out. And then you ram it down firmly on the powder. You must not leave any air gap, because otherwise there can be some dangerous gas pressures. And now your rifle is ready to fire. Should we hit that metal plate there?
Give it a go.
Sounded like a hit.
Yep.
It's easy. These are very, very good rifles. These rifles were issued to the third line troops of the Jäger troops, which means that only 1/3 of the Jägers were equipped with this rifle. They were the most experienced and the best shots of the battalions. You can see that the smoke is pouring out of the pen. This is a beautiful view. So the accuracy of this rifle is quite impressive even today, because up until, let's say, 200 yards, you can put all your shots in the size of a head-sized target, which is quite good for an open-sight rifle even for today. So, depending accuracy, we don't lack anything here. Rate of fire, that's slow.
Right, so this is the part where I try and get it right, probably get it horribly wrong, but fortunately we have the expert to tell me where I'm going wrong. Now, if I remember everything that you've just said correctly, the first thing we need to do is prime the pan.
Yes, but before that, you have to put the hammer into safety, to half cock. That is first notch. Okay, stop there. Now we can prime the pen.
Okay.
Now he's a lefty. Now this is much more difficult if you're a lefty. Let's not forget that there were no left-handed shooters officially in the army. They did not care about that stuff.
Right, so it's a small amount.
Small amount of powder. Yeah. You have to open it. So there's a valve here, which means that you have to push this.
Okay, so it's a positive pressure valve.
Yeah. And just pour a little bit of powder. Make it full. It will be a bit slower ignition, but yeah, that's it. Okay. Now close the pan. Okay. Let the powder burn back at the position. Okay. Now we are going to charge the bore with powder. So lower the stock to the bottom. Always be careful, so the muzzle is pointing in the safe direction. You're not above that.
Right, and now we need the little brass
you
bit.
have to find, and the lefty has to find the right-handed tools.
Okay.
We have to find the powder measure first, which is here.
There it is.
Let me free it for you. Okay. So now comes the tricky part, when you will have to pour the powder from your powder horn. I will hold the rifle. Pour the powder. That's a full charge. Yeah, until it's full. We actually never measure the powder directly from the powder horn, because if there's a spark at the breech, then you have a hand grenade in your hands. So this is kind of a safe loading method, and they understood it well in the 19th century as well. Pour the powder in. Sorry. But
I would be a very, very short-lived
Safety
officer
first.
or soldier at this rate. Which, you know, given the fact they have to swap out naval cannons every time they've
Yeah.
shot them to not get
Yeah.
sympathetic discharges, you'd
Yeah, yeah.
think I'd know.
Yeah. Well, they didn't do it for the infantry rifles.
Mm.
The next part is the patch,
Right.
and I will free a ball for you. That's actually a 14.1 millimeter round ball.
And then we've got the
Start
hammer.
it with the mount, yeah. Excellent.
And then we've got this thing which goes up
Yep.
just on this one.
Perfect. Drum it down for me. Okay, one second. That's a modern time safety issue. You always hold the ramrod like this, because
Mhm.
if there's a spark, and then there's your patch.
Yeah,
It was not symmetrical. No, not very. It will still shoot accurately.
yeah, with
Slam
a
it
patch in
down.
there.
Okay, so because if there's a spark
Yeah.
and your charge goes off, then it will just leave your hand.
Mhm.
If you push it down like this, then it will puncture your hand. Yeah. We actually do a kind of checking whether the charge is done properly or not.
Mhm.
If you just did you hear that the
Yeah.
sound changed? This means that there is no air gap between the powder and the bullet, which says that it's safe to shoot.
Okay.
Okay, let's let it go. This is how it should be done when you're actually loading the rifle.
Okay.
Okay, so you have your target there. The distance is 30 meters, not too much for this rifle, but
And we
still
are
it's a
going
flintlock
to
rifle.
observe our safety.
And this is why every soldier actually had a helper in the battlefield as well.
This is the part where I get flash in the face because
Yep.
I'm a lefty. I'm paid for my sins.
Yeah. Okay, you will have to full cock the hammer first, and then you can fire the gun. The trigger must be stabbed only when you are on the target. If you're okay, shoot. Good one. Yeah.
Well,
That's
now
good
we know
shot.
how long the string on that target was going to last. The answer is 2 shots.
It was much more than one shot, so it's okay. 100% more. Congratulations. That's
Well, actually, the flash to the face wasn't so bad, but I felt the flash to the back of my hand.
Yeah. You know why? Because out from the touch hole,
Mhm.
you actually have a beam of or projection of the internal gas pressure.
Mm-hmm.
So this was quite interesting because at the second half of the 18th century, the army was changing to a gun that did not have to be primed. So it had so big flash hole, 3-4 millimeters, that when you loaded the main charge, it poured out into the pen to the closed in the closed position of the frizzen. But the flash that went into the right direction of the gun was so big that you actually had to put a shield here, so the soldier beside you does not get hurt.
Now, the interesting thing compared to other firearms that I've shot before is that slight delay.
Yeah.
Because obviously with a modern firearm, you pull the trigger, there's a bang, and things happen. With this, you pull the trigger, and mentally I don't know, we'll see on the high speed if I was expecting the recoil, but
Yeah.
instead you hear a click, you hear the shh, and then there's the bang, and by the time the bang comes along, at least for someone who's used to modern firearms, I was like, is everything okay? And
Yeah.
then there's the bang, it's like, oh, okay, everything is fine.
This is why I say that if you learn how to shoot the flintlock, you learn every gun. So because you really have to have a very good hold to have it on target.
Mm.
Actually, we are shooting these guns on competitions even today at 50 meters and 100 meters, and we shoot the same groups as with modern rifles. So there is something that you can learn about flintlocks, and if you learn it, then you can do all the guns.
Right, okay, well,
It's-
on to round 2.
Okay. Okay, so this is our next rifle, which is this was actually designed also for naval use. This is a model 1849 Kammerbüchse, a chamber rifle. It's meaning that it is rifled. It has a rifled bore, but at the breech there's a smaller diameter area, and on the walls of this smaller diameter area you have to upset your undersized bullet when you load it. So you have a very heavy ramrod for this stuff. You can see that this was properly upset because there are rifling marks on this bullet. This is a fired bullet, it's dug from battlefield. And this is a quite interesting rifle because this was the first ever rifle of the Austrian army that fired a conical bullet. So what was the advantage of the conical bullet? Better accuracy because of the rifling, better energy retaining and velocity retaining, which means larger penetration power at longer distances. And of course this was faster to reload than the patched round bore for the rifles. So with these rifles they actually reach the same kind of firing rate as with the smoothbore infantry muskets. Officially, in the original manual they stated that it can fire 8 times a minute, but that's over-optimistic, highly over-optimistic, 3-4 shots per minute. That's what a normal soldier could do. So let's try this rifle. Okay, so we have the cartridge here. The most interesting part of the cartridge is this little primer. Now this should have been made from brass, but this is made from the tin of a beer can, just as an inert primer. I'm not going to use this because actually there is no companies that are reproducing the priming tube, because this one is a tube lock 1849 Kammerbüchse, so I'm going to replace it with a normal percussion cap that was opened on one side to give us enough flash. So this complete system was invented in the 1830s. It was invented by an Italian guy called Giuseppe Console, and it was patented in 1835. This was the first time that it was also used on guns of the Austrian army. This was later perfected by Vincenzo Augustin, and this is actually the last model. This was a standardized small lock, which means that all the parts were interchangeable now. This was the first true interchangeable lock of the Austrian army. And the way this tube lock works is we have this primer. This is 50 millimeters long and let's say 2-3 millimeters wide. We have mercury. They had mercury fulminate inside that little tube. We put this little tube into the corn, this part. This is technically a touch hole liner or something like that. We push the lid to the rest position. We have a little part here that is called the zahn, or the tooth, which is actually a firing pin. And when I will cock the hammer will fall on the top of the tooth, and it will crush the primer and it will ignite the mercury fulminate. So when I'm loading the rifle, I start with, you can see that there's the mark of the tooth already on it. So when I'm actually loading the rifle, I will first prime the pen, then separate the primer from the cartridge. Then I will open the cartridge with my tooth. You pour the powder charge into the bore. Then you push the bullet out from its coating. You can see how the bullet is lubricated. There's a felt string in the grease groove of the bullet that is lubricated with tallow, pure tallow. Then you put the bullet in, and you can see that it fits perfectly. It goes down very lightly because it's undersized compared to the bore. We have a very heavy ramrod tip. With a tip countersunk with the shape of the bullet, so you don't destroy the edge of the bullet, because otherwise you lose the ballistic efficiency. You ram it down firmly, and when it's down at the breech, you hit it hard 3 times. You can see that the ramrod is now bouncing back, which means that it is upset properly. Now we return the ramrod, and now if I cock the hammer and shoot the gun, it will fire it. But I'm going to replace the primer, because this is an inert primer, to the one I modified from a simple percussion cap. This is a bit more tricky, but it will still fire if I put it right in, but this is not right like this, so I will have to change it. Okay. Now it will be okay. And if I cock the hammer, now it's in full cock, we can fire the gun. We kill the metal plate. No problem, on the target. This one has a beautiful kick. That's a 41 gram weighing bullet, so it is really hard.
And obviously gone straight through the target and into something far distant.
Do you want to show the target?
We're going to
check it.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's accurate. It's very accurate. Very accurate.
Yeah, that's I don't think you're surviving that.
No, definitely no.
That's a rather large hole.
Okay, so these projectiles are much slower than in case of the infantry musket. So the bullet of the infantry musket of the 1840s, it is traveling with an initial velocity of around 500 meters per second, little less, little more. But these bullets, because of the rifling and the heavy bullet and the smaller powder charge, they reach, let's say, 250, 270 meters per second, half, which means that the trajectory is not flat anymore. That's why we have a beautiful sight on this rifle. I will show that sight to you. So why we have a smaller powder charge? We needed a smaller powder charge because if the velocity of this bullet will be too high in the barrel, the rifling will just not spin the bullet, which is not good because then we lose the advantage of the rifling itself. So they had to reduce the powder charge. The bullets were heavier because they were conical bullets, which means that the trajectory got curved, very curved. So we had to add a sight like this. We have a base sight that is used for 100 paces, 150 paces, which is, let's say, 120 meters, 110 meters or something like that. And then you flip out this sight, flip up this sight, and you have various distances here that you can use. But you can see that this is a very high sight, so it's actually a mortar. But with this rifle you could achieve the same kind of accuracy than with the Jägerstützen, but at a much faster reloading system. So that's a clear advantage. This was the part where they understood that every soldier has to get a rifle firing a conical bullet.
Right, so it's my turn. So, obviously initially we'll put the primer
yes, we
in,
are going to prime it first. Then I'm going to replace that primer with this model
later on. Okay, so
oh, you're a lefty, I always forget it.
So in the interests of full accuracy, we're putting the primer in like so.
Yeah.
And then
close it.
And
just
then
with a strong force. Yeah, perfect.
Right.
It.
And then
lower it. And not over the muzzle.
And then we're tearing this off.
Yeah. And you can see that as we tore that little wire off, it also opened the part of the cartridge. So this was a very important part to speed up the reloading process.
Right, and then that gets all...
You charge the powder. Good.
A little bit there. There you go. Okay. And then
push it out.
Oh, push it. Oh, yes, that's it. Push it out.
That's it. So easy.
It's like a freeze pop.
Yeah.
And then
I will take the lid off.
It's so good. The Austro-Hungarian army had so many helpers on the battlefield.
It's an elegant army. You know, white uniforms always.
And then
ram it down.
It makes it really nice.
Oh no, not like that.
Ah, yes, of course.
Okay.
1, 2, 3.
Okay. Just let it drop. Let it drop. And you can hear it as it's clinging, so it's a much different sound.
Right, and then that comes back up.
Return it.
There you go.
Okay.
And then
we are going to replace the primer. But first I will help you with this and with this. Okay, comfortable? Okay, so we are going to replace the priming tube with a modified percussion cap. And then you're set.
Right. And in this case, we've actually put the metal target back up again, so...
Yeah.
Let's see how burned my hand.
Don't forget the full cock.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
That has a kick.
Yeah. Oh, be careful with the muzzle. Okay, put it in half cock, please, and open the priming pan. Perfect. Okay, congratulations. It's a good shot.
That has a real kick to it.
Yeah. You feel that you're working with something now.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good rifle.
You could even hear the echo of the target being hit over all of that. So yeah.
So actually, this kind of ignition method was the one that the Austrian army chose instead of the percussion cap. It did not have any kind of advantage compared to the percussion cap, by the way, but they thought that it will be much more easy to convert the flintlocks from the old ignition to the new chemical ignition. But in fact, this was a dead end of the firearms development. So later in the 50s, early 50s, they decided to go for the percussion caps, as the Lawrence rifle is also working for the percussion cap system.
But quite an elegant system to, with the locking in and then it rips open the cartridge.
Yeah.
A nice self-contained system.
It was clever. It was very, very clever. It worked well. And let's not forget that these systems were working parallel to each other. Of course, the supply of these tubes that was much harder because the percussion cap was manufactured all around Europe, but the priming tube that had to be manufactured in the Viennese arsenals. So the supply, if there is a war, you cannot buy it from abroad. So logistics is a bottleneck in this case. But it was never a bottleneck because the only war that these rifles saw was the 48-49 revolution in Hungary, which was a large war with 150,000 armies operating against each other. And also these rifles saw action in the 1859 war between France, the Sardes-Piemontese kingdom, and the Austrian Empire. But by that time they were already converting to the Lorentz rifles. Now these conversions from one rifle or one gun to the other ignition system usually took at least 9 or 10 years for the Austrian army always. So this was a long procedure when you had all the guns in service that was available.
Okay, cool. On to the next one.
Okay, so the Kammerbüchse was a very good rifle, but there was one problem that we also felt, that it has a really huge recoil. And if you have a huge recoil, that will tire the soldier, and the soldier will be afraid of its own gun, which will prevent firing it accurately. So they decided to start reducing the caliber, keeping the rifling system, keeping the conical bullet, but reducing the caliber. At the early 1850s, there were two individuals, two scientists who were developing a compression bullet. A compression bullet is a bullet that is smaller in diameter than the bore, but when it is fired, it will be expanded. So what you see here, these two grooves are not grease grooves. They don't hold the lubrication, but they are compression grooves, which means that they will help the bullet to be upset in the bore easily. Now, these bullets, they were designed first by an Englishman called Wilkinson, but also by Joseph Lorentz, who was one of the key designers of the Viennese arsenal. And this is actually probably the best military rifle ever. What you see in my hands is a Lorentz Jägerstützen. It's a model 1854 Lorentz Jägerstützen. It is a caplock rifle, which means that it is using the standard percussion cap, so they abandoned the priming tube concept. And it's still a muzzle loader, so we are going to charge it from the direction of the muzzle. We have accurate paper cartridges for that. They are holding 4 grams of fine black powder and this compression bullet, and you can see that the lubrication is on the outside of the paper casing, which means that we are going to load the bullets with the paper casing. The caliber of this rifle is 13.9 millimeters and the bullet is 13.7 millimeters, so there is a 0.2 millimeter gap that has to be filled, and this is done actually by the paper itself. So this is how we load it. Okay, so this rifle does not have a half cock right now, which means that I'm not going to prime it first, but I should be starting with priming it, but I'm going to do this as a last part for safety reasons. So we just put it into this, not half cock position, but this is just a position for keeping the primer on the nipple when the rifle is loaded. And then we open the cartridge with our tooth, charge the powder, then we insert the bullet, break the powder casing. This is the powder has a separate casing inside this cartridge, okay. So it is much easier to separate it. And then you ram it down with the same kind of ramrod that you used for the previous guns, but I have to get it because it's under the table. Still don't have the ramrod channel on the light infantry guns of the Austro-Hungarian monarchy. Ram it down firmly. We check if it's firmly on the powder, and then we are ready to fire it. We prime the cone or nipple, and when ready.
Right, so that's my turn. So obviously, as we said, normally we would put the primer on first, but we don't want to accidentally discharge into the air, so we're not going to do that in this case. So we have our so this is the bit
bite it off. That's the easiest.
I love the taste of gunpowder in the morning.
Actually, there are some recipes that use gunpowder for meat. I never tried them.
Right. Still more to go.
Saltpeter, that's a salt.
Mm-hmm.
So it has some kind of a bitter taste. But this is why it was very important to supply water to the soldiers in battle, because you get thirsty right. From that.
And then we tear
no, first put it into the muzzle. Put it into the muzzle.
So
It's much easier. Yeah, it should fit. Okay. Well, probably it is a bit too thick. Yeah, push it down.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's it. That's it. That's why we need the lubrication on the case, because black powder leaves 50% of its residue as a hard residue. Well, some of it leaves as a smoke, but most of it will be inside the barrel, which makes it harder to reload. Okay.
Right.
Cock it, full cock now. Yeah. And don't touch the trigger, because this is a very, very light trigger. Please point it into the safe direction. And only touch the trigger when you're on target. Good one. Yeah. Perfect. Please, first notch. Okay, that's okay also. Please, we'll put this back into the rest position.
Right.
How do you feel about it?
well, it's definitely got a lot less kick than the previous one.
Yeah.
Actually, I did again. I'm going to have interesting little powder burns, but because obviously the other one's got a contained system. This hasn't. But yeah, a lot less kick to it.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, a lot more rapid action between pulling the trigger and. But yeah, from the way that target's swinging, I think I hit pretty much close to dead center, which is roughly where I was aiming.
Yeah.
This is a fun one.
Very good rifle. So this is a short rifle intended for light troops, but of course there's a full version of it, which is let's say 20 centimeters long for the infantry. Of course you had the bayonet. You see the bayonet lock here. For the light infantry rifles, you had a longer bayonet because you still had to be able to fight the horsemen. So you had to have really the same kind of length as with the infantry rifle. And one interesting aspect of the light infantry rifles of the Austro-Hungarian monarchy, that they received the Hau bayonet, which is a sword bayonet, which was one of the very first to be used by any armies. So it's a very good arm. I was world champion with this rifle last year.
Oh, nice!
So it's still shooting excellent.
Perfect. Right.
And then we arrived to the Battle of Königgrätz, 1866, when the Austrian army is still armed with muzzle loaders. Most of them are now Lawrence rifles. Most of them are now not shooting the original compression type bullet, but mini style skirted bullet, because they understood that it can be unstable if the soldier is not loading the rifle properly. But the enemy that was using a Dreiser rifle, which is a needle fire rifle, a breech loading rifle with a self-contained cartridge, and that was a great advantage because the rate of fire doubled. And of course, it is much easier to load a breech loading rifle than a muzzle loader. So this was the point when the Austro-Hungarian army decided after this defeat that they will immediately change the breech loading system as well.
Right, well, on to breech loaders then.
So what I have in my hands is also a light infantry rifle, very close in relationship with the previous one that you saw. The differences are here. We have a breech mechanism here that can be locked, and this rifle can fire a self-contained metallic cartridge now, a rimfire cartridge. And we also have a ramrod, but we don't call this a ramrod anymore, but a cleaning rod, because for a breech loader you don't need a ramrod. The rifle is a model 1854/66 Wenzel Jägerstützen. It is called a Wenzel Jägerstützen because the company that designed this breech system and manufactured this breech system was Wenzel. And this was the immediate reaction to the defeat of Königgrätz. So by that time, the Austrian army was already searching for a breech loading solution, but you know, as the empire was very slow in administration, this is a long process. But now, after the defeat, it was immediately important to speed up this process and do something. And this was the first step. So they just took the Lawrence rifles and converted them with this breech system, with this Wenzel breech system, to fire a metallic cartridge, a self-contained metallic cartridge. Now, the origin of this cartridge, it is called the 14x33R cartridge. It was a rimfire cartridge. My rifle is a centerfire rifle, so it is much easier to reload the cartridges for that, you can see. But if I was completely accurate, then I should be firing this rifle with a rimfire cartridge, which is nearly impossible to reload. But this is not a modern time modification, because in every infantry company and Jaeger company, they received several rifles with the centerfire ignition to practice in the quarters or in the barracks. because the shooting ranges were quite far from the barracks in the city, so they had to find something that made possible to practice for the soldiers in the barracks as well. So they made cartridges with center fire ignition, but with smaller caliber 22 caliber bullets. So they actually did not have that kind of huge energy that these cartridges have. And just to show you the reloading process and how this system works, so there's a large spring that is holding it open or closed. We have a springed firing pin here that will only protrude to fire the cartridge case when I pull the hammer. And you can see how it is locking. So there's a steel bar that moves together with the hammer and enters this hole here. So it interlocks the system perfectly when the gun is firing. Of course, there are no such big chamber pressures as with the modern rounds, because the charge of this cartridge is still the same kind of black powder charge that was used for the muzzle-loading Jägerstutzen. But because of the system, it's a great improvement, and you will see that the loading procedure is much faster, of course. Should we fire it?
Yes.
Okay, so I put the cartridge into the chamber, close the chamber. Ah, okay, I already full cocked the hammer. Aim. Fire. Pull the hammer back. Open the cartridge. It has an extractor, so if I do this, it will just eject the cartridge case. It's so fast. And it was cheap and easy to modify from the old muzzle loaders.
Right. Right, so much less complicated, much quicker. So,
okay, let me just, I will put you back to the position where the normal soldier is before firing the gun.
Rightio.
Okay.
Okay, so
Full cock.
full cock, open. Bullet. That's in the right position.
Perfect. Close it.
Drop it down.
And if you touch the trigger, it will fire. So be
Right.
careful.
Okay, so
Your first miss.
well, it has to happen
Okay,
sometime.
okay, no,
Yeah.
just open it, please. Pull back. Open. Eject. Perfect. And I give you one more cartridge
Okay.
because I'm a good guy.
The stock seems to be splitting.
Yes, I know. It will be repaired. It was all okay. Aim at the bottom center. That's it. That's what I'm talking about.
Target is.
Pull back. Open.
Isn't really much of a surprise given just how big that cartridge is, to be honest. But and it's lovely and smoking.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Smoking
That's
gun.
what I love in black powder. It's dirty, but it's smoking beautifully. So, what's an interesting part of this, that when you're making a paper cartridge, you can ask children, you can ask women, you don't need tools. You need a mandrel, where you have to roll it and you have to cast your balls, or you have to, by that time they were not casting the balls anymore, but they were pressing it on machines. But this is not true for these metallic cases. So the metallic cases had to be done on machines. So you had to buy the specific machinery, tools, everything, which is also another logistics question. So when you can make the paper cartridge with children, you need a factory for this. And that was a great step in the military logistics as well.
And for those of you who obviously you can't feel the thing, but again, naval related, those of you in firearms already will know the barrel heats up on any gun. Now, obviously, this is quite a substantial barrel compared to some modern firearms, but even that with 3 rounds through it, you feel it. It's not uncomfortably hot, but it's warm, and it would rapidly heat up in action. And you imagine, thanks to our friend the square cube law, if you're firing a naval gun, it might be 10 times the diameter of this, but it's going to have hundreds of times more propellant, which means a lot more heat. That's why when you see some after action photos of naval guns that have been in action, all the paint will have been stripped off,
Yeah.
because it'll have just heated up and burned it all away. And also, don't touch the outside of a naval gun,
Yeah.
or any gun once you fired it.
Definitely. But it's when you're shooting these rifles and guns in winter time, this is a beautiful feel. You know, -10, you think, oh, it's warm.
Hand warmer. Right, on to the next round.
So this is a fast rifle, and I really have to say that from a technical point of view, it's good, because up until 100 and 120 meters, you can hit the enemy. You don't have to set the sights, by the way, but at that distance, so the trajectory will cover that field easily. But at the beginning of the 1860s, there were some scientists, for example, Sir Joseph Whitworth, who were experimenting with smaller caliber bullets, riflings and smaller caliber bullets. And it was found out that a long bullet, a smaller caliber long bullet, so which has the modern, much more modern bullet shape, is much stable on long ranges. And this was a time when each and every single country tried to make their rifle and their soldiers shoot up to 1,000 meters accurately. Of course, at 1,000 meters you don't see the enemy anymore, individual soldiers, but let's not forget that by this time there were close combat formations, and aiming at the front of an infantry battalion that is deployed in line, that is much easier than one single soldier. So that was the real purpose of these long-range guns. So every country was trying to reduce the caliber, and the first one to issue a small caliber rifle to each and every single soldier was the Austrian army, which in 1867 from this rifle stepped to a small caliber rifle firing a center fire cartridge with nearly the same powder load, a 20 gram weighing bullet, and that was the Vendor rifle. I will show it.
And do look at that.
Okay, so now we arrive to the modern rifle period. This is still loaded with black powder. The caliber of this rifle is 11 by 58R. This is the Vendor rifle caliber. This is an improved Vendor rifle caliber because in 1867, when this rifle entered service, it had much less powder and a lighter bullet. But they wanted to increase the ballistic efficiency of the rifle in the 70s, so there were experiments with increasing the size of the capacity of the case, so it could accept 60 grains of black powder now, and also a heavier paper patch bullet. They also had problems with the high muzzle velocity, because we arrive now to the muzzle velocity of 400 and 430 meters per second, which is, for a conical bullet, is, let's say, the edge where it will still be spinned by the rifling, depending on the twist rate of the rifling. But they had leading problem, which means that the rifling gets contaminated with lead, and then the rifle will lose accuracy. So this is why they decided to put a paper patching on the bullet. You can see that there's a small edge there. That's a paper patch that will separate the expanding bullet in the rifling from the rifling itself, so leading will not be an issue. And this was the model 1877 cartridge, so what we are going to fire. The Vendor rifle is also an interesting rifle because from this point the difference between a normal infantry rifle and the difference between the light infantry rifle disappears. So all the Jägers and all the normal infantrymen received the same rifle. In fact, this was the Jäger and infantry rifle, or the Hunter and the infantry rifle in naming as well. The loading mechanism and the breech mechanism was designed by Karl Holub. He was a Czech-born gun designer. This is called the Tabernakelverschluss because if you see it, it's very close to the tabernaculum in the churches when they keep the holy artifacts and stuff like that, and you open and close the rifle like this. So this is a cylinder that actually has a split part where you can insert the cartridge, and when you close it, it will chamber perfectly the cartridge, and it just cannot open. So it is like a very strange bolt action system. And then you cock the hammer, and then you can fire the gun. It also has a springed firing pin. You can see it under the hammer.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a very safe and strong design. The only problem of this rifle was that it was very hard to make it a repeating rifle, nearly impossible to make it a repeating rifle. If I compare it, for example, to the bolt action rifles of the Imperial German Army, the 1871 Mauser, that was the first bolt action rifle, that could be converted to a tube magazine repeater. This no. So they had to abandon the system when they switched to the repeating rifles. So the cartridge is 11mm bullet and still loaded with black powder. Let's fire it. Okay, so this is where we start. The hammer is in full rest. We put it to safety position, open the breech, insert cartridge, close breech, cock hammer, fire. And when we're done, safety position. With a large push, we open the cartridge case, the breech, and then we have the ejected or extracted cartridge. The rate of fire is nearly the same as in the case of the Vencer rifle, so which means the normal soldier will fire 8 to 10 shots a minute. If it's a fast firing action, then it can be increased to 14, 16, but without aiming properly.
Okay.
Your turn.
Right, so.
Okay, put it to rest position. First cock it fully, and then you can release it. Perfect.
Right. So starting from default, so we're going to safe position.
Yeah.
Flip open. The cartridge goes in, and then flip it closed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You can see that it has a rounded part,
Mm-hmm.
which means that it will just push the cartridge gently into the chamber perfectly. And now if you cock it, you
Now
can
ready
fire.
to go, and then I have to switch over.
Yeah. This has a hard trigger pull.
Okay. Yeah, very hard.
Yeah. Just pull it, and it will fire sometime.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Target
it
like
has
that one. Right, and then back to safety.
Back to safety and open it with a. Yeah. If you do it quickly,
Then you get
it
more.
will extract. Yeah.
And that lovely rotten egg smell and
Yeah.
smoke.
It's still black powder.
You didn't have to grab the muzzle this time.
No.
Right.
I love this rifle. This is very strong, very reliable. It is said that when some foreigners were visiting the factory at Steyr, it's very important that these guns were made by a private factory, Josef Wendel's factory in Steyr, and it said that when he demonstrated how rugged his rifles are, the shooting training facility was on the second floor. So when he was firing a gun, he threw it out from the window. They went down, took it up from the rocks, fired it, it was still accurate. Then threw it out again from the window. So it's really a strong. Of course, there were dents on the wood and probably little cracks, but it was still firing.
And all the collectors wincing at the idea of chucking something like this out a window.
But if you find that rifle that Josef Wendel was throwing out from the window now, you get a millionaire.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, look at the size we have here. So if you check the size, they are regulated up to 15,000 meters. Now previously they were measured in paces. So when you see 900 on the sight of a Lorentz rifle, that's 900 paces. You have to multiply that by 0.75 to have meters. But now we are at meter system. So which means that 1.5 kilometer they were firing this gun. Of course, that's over optimistic because this open sight will limit how far you can shoot.
Yeah.
So when you don't see the enemy, it does not matter if your trajectory can do the 1,500 meters, you will still not be able to hit it.
It could go that far, but you're not going to hit anything bigger than it's smaller than a building.
Yeah, but again, we are in the 70s, and in the 70s, if you check all the tactical manuals, all the regulations, you will still find that there are deployed lines, there are attack columns. So of course, the military is changing because at the 1866 war they understood that the open combat orders, the skirmish line, will be the one that they will use for fighting, and the firepower will be the decisive force in a battle, not the bayonet. But still, in the manuals, you still can find the closed orders. It's very interesting that I have many primary material from this period when they were testing the first on the first maneuvers these guns, and actually, the tactics that they deployed or employed by that time were nearly the same that we use today. So this is probably where we are switching to modern warfare in case of rifle usage. Let's try the last one.
Modern
So now we arrive to the end of the 19th century. Okay, so there are many great changes with this rifle. So first of all, it's a repeating rifle. It's a box magazine repeating rifle. It's a straight pull action. which is supposed to be a better system than the bolt action, but actually it was not. It's a repeating rifle firing a self-contained cartridge, a center fire cartridge. So we have the bullet, the powder, and the primer united in a metallic case. This is a small caliber rifle, which means that the bullet itself is around 8 millimeters. So the cartridge we are firing is the 8x50R cartridge. This was the original First World War version of this cartridge. And it is loaded with smokeless powder. Now the first smokeless powder that the Austro-Hungarian Empire was developing was developed in the 1850s. It was gun cotton that they tried to use for muzzle loaders, but it was just not foolproof enough. So it could fire the gun. It cleaned. It burned clean. It was really a good solution. But if the soldier loaded too, then the gun exploded, and it of course hurt not just the soldier, but probably the one beside him as well. So it was not soldier proof. But in 1886, the French army adopted a rifle, the 1886 Lebel rifle, that was actually firing a self-contained cartridge with smokeless powder, with an 8mm bullet, a full metal jacket bullet. Let's not forget that now the velocities of these cartridges or these bullets, the muzzle velocities are up to 600-700 meters per secondum, nearly at the same level where we use our hunting cartridges today. Which means that the rifling would just damage the lead bullet. Even if it's a hardened alloy, it will still not be able to spin it properly. So they added a soft metal jacket on the bullet, and this is where we arrived at the full metal jacket bullets. This is open at the end. This is where we put the lead core into this jacket. Now, the velocity and the light bullet and the ballistically very good form bullet allowed them to have a very flat trajectory. So up until 400-450 meters, you don't have to set the sights. You just aim at the center of the enemy soldier, and you will be able to hit it somewhere at the head or at the stomach or at any part or the lower body part, but you can still hurt it. So, which means that now we arrived to the modern time military rifle use. Now, how we load this rifle? We have a clip that is holding 5 rounds. Now, these are 5 different rounds. The first 2 are 100 years old. So these are Bulgarian-made cartridges from the early 30s. The 3 below are not military cartridges. They are just modern time hunting cartridges. The way we are going to fire this gun is we put the clip here, push it down, and then when we just push the bolt forward, we can immediately fire the gun, and then we are going to empty it and just keep on shooting.
Okay.
Okay, I suggest. Oh no, these are different cartridges. Okay.
Right, so.
Okay, so this is where we start.
Okay, so pull back.
Yeah, strongly.
It's a bit like the Canadian Ross rifle.
Yep.
And we know how many issues they have with that.
Put it there and just push it into the magazine. Yeah, until it sticks.
Yeah.
Okay.
And now if that was a Garand, that would be how I'd lose my thumb.
Yeah, definitely.
Right, and then
push it forward. Yeah, and it's chambered, so it will fire. It will have a kick. Lefties. Okay. Stop, please. Now we are going to demonstrate how the clip is falling out at the last shot. So don't fire the gun, hold it in position, and just run the cartridges through the chamber. Hop!
There it goes.
Yeah. And now you can reload it. Now this... let's get the live rounds. Now these little clips, it's a clever system, but it is much harder to reload if you just fire 2. Then you have to empty it. You can reload it, but it's difficult. So there are much better systems than this. The other problem is that, check this bolt handle here. What you see here. Let's show it to the camera. It's a lot of wear.
Well.
Yeah, but you know why that wear is there? The problem with this system is that it works very hard. So if you ever handled a Schmidt-Rubin rifle, a Swiss Schmidt-Rubin rifle, that's a straight pull also, but it goes like this, like Swiss watch. Swiss rifle, Swiss watch. In this case, this is not true. So if you have little dirt in the system, it's frozen, it is very, very hard to open it. And the damage you see here is from the boots.
People
the soldiers,
kicking it
yeah,
open.
he had to kick it open. So this is a not the best rifle. After the First World War, it was still used. So this is the M95 rifle. What you have, this is the original First World War version. This was made in two places, in Steyr and Budapest as well, at the Fäg factory. But there were shorter versions for the cavalry. After the First World War, they tried to increase the ballistic efficiency of these cartridges, so they rechambered them for the 8x56, a bit more power, much more kick, lighter bullet, pointed bullet. So the cartridge that you saw here, this is the original design. The bullet is this very rounded shape, but this later was changed to the more pointed shape when the how do you say, the protection helmets arrived to the armies. So they needed much more penetrating power, so they made a lighter bullet with larger shape, with a better shaped bullet. But it's a good part of history. So this was actually the very first really successful repeating rifle of the monarchy. It had some predecessors. There was one that fired the 11mm Vendor cartridge or close to that with black powder cartridges. But this was the first one that was really successful, and this was the one that was adopted for every soldier in the First World War. But as the first year of the war was so unsuccessful that they lost many Mannlicher rifles, they had to push in service the Wanzer rifles and the Vendor rifles also. So up until the end of the First War, you could find all three rifles on the front.
And following the pattern of extremely ambitious sights, this one's set out to 2,600 meters.
Of course.
If you need a light field artillery piece.
Yeah. Now we are shooting rifles up to 1,000 yards. We are going to have the World Championships of long-range black powder muzzle-loading shootings in Hungary in 2 weeks. But we are shooting at a 2x3 meter target, and that is hardly visible. So imagine when you are shooting at 1,000 yards on a single soldier. That's impossible. At 2,000 meters, but that's magic.
Yeah,
that's magic. But it's still a good rifle, and really these cartridges are up to the level that we use today for hunting and for target shooting. So I usually say that in the past 130 years, nothing happened in firearms history. Nothing, because we are still shooting these cartridges. Probably a laser gun should upgrade it.
So let's head back to the full stock range. Right, so we're back at our little rack, impromptu rack at the range. So thank you very much. This was excellent.
It's my pleasure.
The kick on some of those things is ferocious, and I mean, we'll take a look in a minute, or possibly I'll have an insert somewhere in the picture of the target, and you'll see the Vendel rifle put a heck of a dent in that thing. I mean, that's not a thin metal target, and I mean, even if you were using that as a shield or body armor, you're going to feel that.
Yeah. It's quite interesting because the Vendel made a big difference in the medics as well, because up until that time you had large caliber slings, which means it will puncture a hole at the entrance and the exit, and does not really do anything in the middle. But when the bullet of the Vendel impacted the enemy soldier above the sound barrier, with the velocity above the sound barrier, they saw that the energy transfer is much harder. So it was the 1870-71 war between Prussia and France, when they saw that the Chassepot rifle, which is also 11mm caliber bullet, fired with 430 meters per second. When it hit the Prussian soldier, there was a small hole here, but the back of the soldier was missing. And this is caused because the lead bullet, if it's impacting the body with a high velocity, it will deform. And the small caliber bullets actually deformed to 20-25 millimeter, and they transferred all their energy to the substance. So they made really large wounds that were much harder to heal. So actually these two rifles, their terminal ballistics is much worse than compared to the muzzle loaders.
Well, that's something quite a sobering thought, but someone's having a great deal of fun in the range next to us with their shotgun. But yes, it shows the progress of firearms technology, and the fact that, you know, even in the late 19th century, we think of the First World War and everything, but even by the late 19th century, I mean, you don't want to get hit at all generally, but you definitely don't want to get hit.
Yeah, whatever bullet hits you, it will kill you.
Yeah.
But that's why I love 19th century, because that's a huge development. So from the ancient times, from the muzzle loaders with flintlock that we're using in the 16th century, in 100 years we arrived to the machine gun, we arrived to the semi-auto guns, and the smokeless cartridges, what we actually use today. So there is, since that time, there is very fast development.
And where can people find your channel to find out more about these and other weapons in your arsenal?
Okay, just type Cap and Ball. Cap and Ball, that's the name. And please subscribe also to my channel. And I'm really happy that you came to Hungary and we could make this little shooting session together. It's always fun to work with good guys.
Thank you very much. And yeah, so subscribe there. Presumably, if you're watching already, then you have subscribed. If you haven't, well, congratulations, you somehow found the channel anyway, but yeah, the button's there as well. So we're going to go and have a look at the target, and we'll see you again in another video. Bye.
Take care. Should I?
Yeah. So you can see the difference in the hole sizes.
Yeah. That's Smalley here. M95. That's the Vandal. That was the Kammerbüchse. 18mm, and these are two Jägerstützen bullets, but different type of bullets. So this was the Wenzel, that's got a more rounded shape, and this was the compression bullet.
And then we have down here,
Yes.
what the Vandal did.
That's a punch.
That's why you saw it go spinning like a tree.
Yeah.
Good grief.
Yeah. That's why we love metal.
Yeah.